Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is Ukraine War News Update, second part thereof for the 15th of December 2024. I've just been out and made some mulled wine, so Merry Christmas. That's good. And in the spirit of Christmas, I'm going to do some decorations behind here today, but greatest internet community's joint campaign, says car from Ukraine, trucks under the Christmas tree. We are still in the coveted first position for fundraising. Let's keep it that way. We need to get to 20,000. Thank you so much for those who have, all 188 of you who have contributed to this, and all the other people to the other campaigns it's a single joint campaign really, to try and get 15 trucks from the UK and EU over to Ukraine. The two trucks that we've raised the first one that's going to be turned into one of these kind of MLRS things. I'm going to do a short video on this later, and there's another unit that we are going to assist as well. The same battalion from where the guy who was sadly caught on camera being assassinated, and the statue's now been made of him, the guy that's smoking and said Slava Ukraini, and then they shot him. That's the unit that the second vehicle is going to go to. Right, we're going to go on to military aid, and talking about MLRS, Ukraine has begun the production of 122mm rockets for the BM-21 Grad MLRS. This is very important because these are old Soviet weapons that the Ukrainians have, and it would be really useful if they could still make those. Although some people saying, surely there are more effective weapons. Actually, these are pretty useful, and if you've got those launchers, then you might as well stack them full of these munitions. Now, they aren't super accurate; they're sort of blanket fire, but certainly the Ukrainians would profit from having a good source of those munitions. Right, United States Agency for International Development, USAID, has donated 10 autonomous welding machines that will help in the rapid repair of Ukraine's energy infrastructure. So that's really good news there. And we are seeing lots of these sorts of drones. I shared an image with you today of one similar to this, or video. This is a Ukrainian unmanned ground vehicle, UGV, mine layer that can disperse 9 evenly spaced TM62 anti-tank landmines on a single mission. So that's good news. Send them out, lay the mines. You're not going to lose a human sapper in doing that dangerous task. You can just get this remote mine layer to go about doing its business. Now, French Aid Ukraine says the A2SM 1000, so the AASM 500 is the previous guided glide bomb that the French provide for Ukraine. Well, the 1000 is on the verge of being declared fully operational. It will be equipped on the Rafale F4. However, says French Aid Ukraine, thanks to the European Concept and Design Authority, Safran, the company involved can work wonders on aircraft used by the Ukrainian armed forces. We shall see. I mean, that might be a little bit of a pipe dream, or it could be that Ukrainians get to use that munition as well. Taste of Christmas. Moving on to geopolitics. Not too much on the military aid front today. I mean, it is Sunday after all. Right, let's go where we're going to start. Okay, a protest in Georgia. So, first of all, the Georgians have elected a bunch of lawmakers elect. So not exactly a public process. And in fact, there was only one candidate, which was this far-right, anti-West hardliner, former football player, used to play for Man City in the mid-90s. He has been elected entirely in line with the ruling Georgian Dream agenda. Not good news really, but there was nothing else that was ever going to happen. It was always going to be Mikel Cavalascivili. So he has been elected, former football player, and the only candidate for presidency for the first time. In Georgia, the people did not vote, but the Electoral College voted. So that has happened. My mouse has just ran out of batteries. Let's go to protests still continue. I don't know what day it is now, but we've had Zurabishvili, the existing president, still roaming the streets. She's been walking freely and gracefully among her people all day, says Marika Mekiashvili. The illegitimate regime is locked up in buildings and defended by thousands of armed thugs. Deceiving individuals and symbolism could not be more powerful. Natalia Machereviani, the mother of the young dissident Gega Kobakidzie, who was sentenced to death by the Soviets, demanded the release of political prisoners, while the president reiterated the unavoidable necessity of new, free and fair elections. This was moments after Tbilisi Mayor Kaladziej had to call off his Christmas tree lighting celebration, for which he had mobilised special forces around the tree. The difference could not be more stark. Our Western partners either continue recognising President Zurashvili as a legitimate president, or they are betraying the people of Georgia. Be interested to see what the reaction is from the EU and other entities. Now, this is a Christmas tree ceremony, and look at all of these thugs, all these internal security members, absolute vast numbers of men dressed in black with black, essentially balaclavas. Has anyone in the entire world ever seen a freaking special forces ensuring a Christmas tree light up? Says Mikiashvili. Just really horrible scenes to see that many thugs, is all I can call them, lined up. Now, interesting. So while that is going on in Georgia, and they are still protesting, there have been these protests in Serbia as well. As James Wagafala says, all of a sudden, people around the world are figuring out that Putin isn't going to come to the rescue of his stooges if they get kicked out of power. So these are massive demonstrations in Serbia against a corrupt regime in the country, and that's from a couple of days ago. Well, actually, I haven't heard too much, so I did a bit of research, and yeah, it is on the, it is in the news. Here we have AP, Associated Press, saying protests spread in Serbia against President Alexander Vučić following fatal fall of concrete canopy. So it came from a little bit of a disaster that has led, I know there are students protesting in Serbia. Officers in Serbia's Novi Sad were seen pushing away opposition protesters who gathered outside a police station on Thursday amid further demonstrations against the country's President Alexander Vučić.
Večeras smo ovdje da pokažemo nezadovoljstvo na ulicama I ovdje smo da pokažemo.
Now, I don't know whether that's, the elite students, urban populations doing this, whether there are more widespread protests in Serbia, but it's exactly what you want to see. Serbia is a facilitator of the Putin regime throughout Eastern Europe, even though they're not in the EU. They're on the edge, sort of pretending they want to come in, but really trying to urge, I think, Hungary and Slovakia into a union of ne'er-do-wells. Kyiv has, speaking of Hungary, Kyiv has refused to hold telephone talks with Viktor Orban, the Hungarian dictator wannabe, to discuss Ukraine's truce with Russia. So remember, Viktor Orban phoned up Putin to discuss, essentially, to discuss Ukraine's surrender, a peace deal for Ukraine, without the say-so of Ukraine, and that annoyed, obviously, the Ukrainians and Zelensky. Quote, there is a proposal on the table that has not been there for the past 1,000 days. One side considers it acceptable, the other rejects it. I presume that's Peter Shihato, the foreign minister there, who is unabashedly pro-Russian. We move on. And the US is weighing sanctions on Russia's shadow fleet. So we've seen ramping up of sanctions from the UK, EU and the US and Chinese banks, say Reuters. The US is considering more sanctions on the shadow fleet and tankers and has not ruled out targeting Chinese banks if they are found to be involved in Russia's war effort, said US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. And goodness me, I hope that maintains after January the 20th. The EU is to impose the first sanctions on Russian intelligence over disinformation campaigns, according to Bloomberg. Yes, 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 yes. The proposed measures target more than a dozen individuals and 3 entities, including Russian intelligence officers and media entrepreneurs, according to Bloomberg. We need much, much more of that. Every election in the world at the moment is being interfered with by Russia. They are just everywhere. Now, the EU's new energy commissioner, Dan Jorgensen, said his main priority in office will be to craft a plan to finally sever energy links with Russia and end Europe's dependence on Russian energy imports. I commend this initiative by Dan Jorgensen, and I hope he can successfully accomplish his goals, says Anton Gerashenko. And there's a map here with lots of little red dots that you can see there. Lots of ships, one presumes, and whatnot. Okay, so we need, says Anton Gerashenko, we need reinvigorated and coordinated action against Russia's energy sector to secure Europe from Moscow's energy blackmail, and more importantly, to cut off the main revenue streams fueling the Russian war machine, the sales of oil and gas. Each red dot on the map shows Russian ships still delivering oil to buyers all over the world, Europe included. Each red dot is allowing Russia to pour bloody oil money into its war effort and prolong the suffering of Ukrainians. Each red dot represents more work to be done at the international level to weaken and eventually stop Russia. So quite incredible, that map there. In fact, we're going to return to oil exports and oil transit in a little while. But in the meantime, we're going to go to the UK. So Keir Starmer has urged the G7 to intensify pressure on Putin with sanctions. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer emphasised the importance of inflicting maximum pain. That's what we want to hear. Maximum pain on Vladimir Putin through additional sanctions and enhanced military support of Ukraine. That's what we definitely want to hear, both from military support and sanctions, but we need the actions to back up the words. To reassure some of you, says French aid to Ukraine, you should know that the position of the new Prime Minister, François Bayrou, so the French have just had to create a new government because the last one effectively got dissolved. The government of Michel Barnier, which was very pro-Ukraine. Well, luckily now, and this will be the intention of Emmanuel Macron, who knows what's going on in Europe, the new Prime Minister is on the same course as well. On Ukraine, he's identical to that of the Minister of the Armed Forces and the President of the Republic. So everyone is singing off the same song sheet there, so that's really good news. Now, in terms of sanctions, Visa and Mastercard in the Russian Federation are to be toasted. Tucker Carlson is toasted, obviously, when he was out there using his credit cards freely to buy his stuff in the supermarkets he was amazed at in Moscow. From January the 1st, 2025, it will no longer be possible to withdraw cash from Russian ATMs using cards using Visa and Mastercard cards. Banks warn that some terminals will stop accepting them and strongly recommend getting Mir cards to avoid problems with cash withdrawals and payments through ATM. So another example of how Russia is being sanctioned to pariah status. It is becoming an isolated, closed system, really. Now, this was a story that went around yesterday. Cornelia Dudaitė was disqualified from the World Functional Fitness Championships in Hungary. And she is Lithuanian, I think. Yes, for wearing this T-shirt. It is Make Russia Small Again. And she is wearing that because she is protesting Russia's athletes being able to wear Russian markings, like the Z markings and whatnot. Now, she was really good there, really stood up for the Ukrainians effectively and against Russia, and she was disqualified for that. Obviously, the Russians weren't. This is Hungary, after all. Now, here she is. Lithuanian athlete Cornelia Dudaitė was disqualified for the World Fitness Championship in Hungary for wearing a T-shirt saying Make Russia Small Again. The whole Lithuanian team resigned with her in protest. The championship held in Budapest featured a Russian team. As mentioned, Russians were supposed to be represented as neutral athletes, but the announcer referred to them as Russians, and they wore T-shirts with their country's name. In protest, Cornelia wore a T-shirt with the slogan "Make Russia Small Again." This T-shirt, quote, "This T-shirt shows which country I support. First and foremost, I'm a citizen, and only then an athlete." The organisers demanded that she remove the T-shirt and delete all photos with it, claiming it offended Russians. Dudaitė refused, after which she was disqualified. "They said my participation insults the Russians," she wrote. "I hope Ukraine wins and really insults them." Later, Dudaitė's decision was supported by the National Federation. All Lithuanian athletes, 28 of them in total, withdrew from the competition. Huge respect and gratitude to her for her position. Thank you, Lithuanian team, for standing up for your beliefs. Absolutely brilliant. That should make bigger news. I think it's really great to see that kind of stuff, and screw Hungary and screw Russia, quite frankly. Now, I find this fascinating. I'm not doing a whole US section as I have often been doing recently because there's so much stuff going on in the US. People have said to me things like, I'm unsubscribing because you're talking too much about Trump. Some people mean like, I like Trump and I think you're being unfair type thing. And some people mean being like, I don't like Trump either, but you're spending too much time on him. The reason I have to do that is because he's the single most important human being in the world concerning the war in Ukraine, arguably, right? So he gets to dictate, and I use that word pretty operatively, he gets to dictate what the US position is on Ukraine and whether Ukraine are thrown a military lifeline or not. He is insanely important, and what he's doing in the US, it requires an awful lot of monitoring because there are some disturbing signs. So, like, if I just ignore Trump for the next 5 weeks, that would be doing a disservice to trying to understand this conflict. You know, everyone's talking about Trump. Like, my sources are all talking about Trump. Ukrainians are talking about Trump. You know, news, mainstream media outlets are talking about Trump. So if I'm like just going to ignore him because I don't want to upset some of my viewers, then that's a real problem for me. Or that said, I'm not going to mention him too much today, but this is a fascinating nugget here. So Kyiv has delayed a minerals deal with the US to let Trump take credit, according to New York Times. So Ukrainian authorities twice delayed signing the agreement, officials said. The delays offer the opportunity for Trump to claim an early victory at the start of his term. This is amazing. It's almost like you're treating Trump with kid gloves and saying, we understand that he's all about himself and he's all about self-validation and all about, communicating, expressing, victories when he has them or even when he doesn't. So we think that rather than Biden signing these deals, which twice he should have done, we're going to just put it on hold for a bit, wait for Trump to come in, and after January the 20th, he gets to sign them, and then he gets to feel like he has won these kind of trade deals or whatever trade arrangements, and then feels that actually he's getting something out of Ukraine, which might then make him more amenable to giving military aid to Ukraine or something like that. It's pretty incredible. Moving on. I'm sorry for my mulled wine intervals. CNN reports that by buying Russian liquefied natural gas at low prices from India and China, the US then resells it to its European allies at significantly inflated prices. Ouch. Now, I haven't read the original CNN article, but that could well be happening. Somebody saying that I think that's nonsense. The US has plenty of natural gas. Australia too. Yeah, they may have plenty of natural gas, but yeah, you can also make a pretty penny off buying and selling. Doesn't matter whether you've got plenty yourself. So yeah, interesting, and that would be somewhat controversial. Now, retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, says Jake Bro, and Trump's special Ukraine envoy reveals on Fox Business that he will be travelling with a delegation soon to Ukraine to speak with and listen to members of Ukraine's government. Fascinating. Now, I heard, I haven't got it. Why have I not got it? Some of my links, I think, went walkabout last night. But there was a wee rumour. Someone, can't remember who it was. One of my sources was like, I've been speaking to some people, to some Ukrainian, journalists? Ukrainian journalists who've been speaking to some Republicans in the US, and they were quite upbeat about positive things that may well happen. And like I've been saying before, if positive things, I'm not saying positive things won't happen after January the 20th. I'm saying they will happen despite what Trump has said and what he probably feels deep inside. So if good things happen, it will be because of these other people around Trump who are the sensible ones, not Donald Trump Jr., not Tucker Carlson, not Elon Musk, etc., Kash Patel, Vivek Ramaswamy. Those people are wingnuts who have completely dangerous views on geopolitics. But people like Keith Kellogg and Mike Waltz, who might have a much better idea about what's going on vis-a-vis Russia and Ukraine and Europe and geopolitics, these people might end up convincing Trump for, with whatever rationale, I don't know. They might end up convincing him to do the right thing. Trump could end up doing the right thing. Brilliant, happy days. Don't for a second think that's something to congratulate Trump over. Oh, well done, Trump. Trump has shown himself to be willfully ignorant on all matters Ukraine and geopolitics in general. He doesn't read, for a man, right? Think of the practicalities, right? If you or I were to become president of the USA, right? Literally think of how you would have to spend, you have 24 hours a day. How would you spend your time making sure you had the requisite knowledge to be able to make decisions that concerned all these different nations? Now, we've known from different speeches that Trump has given previously that he actually doesn't understand nations. He doesn't understand where they are on the map, all that kind of stuff. We know he doesn't read books. So if he's not reading books and he's not reading articles and he's being fed like excerpts at most from articles he's got these media people. What was the name of the woman that was like super important she was like the most important woman in America that you've never heard of. And she's the one that tailors all the articles and just takes excerpts out from things like Newsmax and whatever and feeds, and Breitbart feeds them to Trump, and he gets to read them. But just honestly, in practical terms, how many hours a day, how many minutes a day is Trump learning about the world so that he has requisite knowledge to make decisions about the world, about America's place in the world and the interaction with these other nations? Like, we know that he doesn't understand the funding of NATO still. We know he doesn't really understand tariffs, it appears, even still. Like, how is he getting that knowledge? And if there is no way that we can see him getting that knowledge, then we have to conclude that he's just manifestly ignorant about international politics and affairs. And he just looks around and he's quite intuitive. He's quite knee-jerk, and he's like, yeah, I like King John, and I like Putin because people do what they say. I like the idea of people doing what I say and not criticizing me as a powerful leader. So he sees that around the world and he likes it. We know that, and we know that international leaders have said that. We know that the former Prime Minister of Australia was absolutely scathing about him in that Q&A program on Australian television recently, where he just said, you would just see him Trump, that is, in these meetings, just completely acquiesce, almost melt in the presence of these really strong dictatorial leaders. And that's what other world leaders see in Trump, and that's what we see from just the way he's interacted. Right, JFK, who is the HHS pick, insanely thinking about revoking polio vaccines. I mean, anyway, JFK's grandson, RFK Jr., not JFK. JFK's dead. RFK Jr., head of HS, nominated to be head of HHS, Human and Health Services. Is that right? Anyway, JFK's grandson, Jack Schlossberg, has accused his cousin, RFK Jr., of being a Russian spy. Wow. That's pretty forward there. But just goes to show, what some people who know a little bit more about RFK Jr. than maybe the rest of us think about RFK Jr. Vis-a-vis Russia and Ukraine. Art Candy here saying Donald Trump has just tapped Truth Social CEO Devin Nunes as chairman of the president's Intelligence Advisory Board. The former House representative who kept planting bogus intel about the Biden family and Ukraine on Fox News, a clown show. Now, this is particularly interesting given what we've heard about Alex Smirnov, who has just admitted in court that the whole Hunter Biden Burisma thing was made up. And he was in contact with Russian intelligence. Well, that was kind of Devin Nunes, a big fan of all that. Now, quote, this is Shashank Joshi from New York Times. Trump announced he would appoint Devin Nunes, a former member of Congress who had used his role as chairman of the House Intelligence Committee to try to delegitimize the Trump-Russia investigation, to head an independent advisory board on espionage policy. So you've got a guy who has previously sided with with a Russian position in saying that there is no issue of Russian interference in US elections and perpetuating the Hunter Biden stuff. Basically all the things that Russia would want. Here's a guy that aligns with that. Is now going to be in charge of espionage policy for the US. is just insane. This is like Tulsi Gabbard 2.0. Like, what are you thinking? It's almost, it's like a game. It's like, who is the single worst person I can choose for this position? Who's the single worst person I can choose to be administering scientific, advocating for science-based policy making, evidence-based policy making? Who's a single worst person for that? Oh, let's choose an anti-vaxxer who is full of conspiracy theories. RFK Jr. Let's put him in charge of all that stuff. Okay, brilliant, well done. Now, who's a person we should put in charge of all our intelligence agencies who are working against Russia and, I don't know, maybe Assad in Syria? Someone who really likes Russia and Syria? Should we do that? Oh yeah. Let's put Tulsi Gabbard in that position. Who should we put in charge of spying and espionage? Should we put someone that didn't think that Russia had any interference in the 2016 elections and was perpetuating literal Russian intelligence talking points in Congress and in the political sphere? Yeah, what, Devin Nunes? Yeah, that's him. Let's get him into that position. Kash Patel, who should we put in charge of the FBI who wants to purge the FBI and go chasing after people who are critical of our wannabe dictator leader? Kash Patel, let's do that. It's just like tick all the very worst people you can put into these positions. It blows my mind. Start with Matt Gaetz, and luckily that fell by the wayside, but my goodness. I think we need to return to this. Let's listen to, I'm not going to play all of this, but a little bit of Reagan. And who would have known 10 years ago that I would be advocating for some Reagan theology, if you like, some Reagan ideology.
We cannot buy our security, our freedom from the threat of the bomb, by committing an immorality so great as saying to 1 billion human beings now enslaved behind the Iron Curtain, give up your dreams of freedom, because to save our own skins, we're willing to make a deal with your slave masters. Alexander Hamilton said, a nation which can prefer disgrace to danger is prepared for a master and deserves one. Now let's set the record straight. There's no argument over the choice between peace and war.
Here it comes.
But there's only one guaranteed way you can have peace, and you can have it in the next second. Surrender. Admittedly, there's a risk in any course we follow other than this, but every lesson of history tells us that the greater risk lies in appeasement. And this is the specter our well-meaning liberal friends refuse to face, that their policy of accommodation is appeasement.
This is really interesting because he's attacking liberals for accommodationism and appeasement, which is exactly what now MAGA is advocating for. So you've had this switcheroo over the last 40 years, whereby Reagan would now be standing up as I don't know what he would be now, but certainly not in the present manifestation of the GOP. And he would be standing up, and I don't know who he would put instead of liberals, MAGA. He said, you're advocating for appeasement. This is the worst of your options.
And it gives no choice between peace and war, only between fight or surrender. If we continue to accommodate, continue to back and retreat, eventually we have to face the final demand, the ultimatum. And what then? Well, Nikita Khrushchev has told his people he knows what our answer will be. He has told them that we're retreating under the pressure of the Cold War, and someday, when the time comes to deliver the final ultimatum, our surrender will be voluntary, because by that time, we will have been weakened from within spiritually, morally, and economically.
Weakened, I'm going to play all of this. Weakened from within, economically, spiritually, morally. I think about the weakening from within that the Russian influence projects are instigating. Those chasms that they're driving in the American mindset by taking these cracks and putting a wedge in them and smacking them into chasms, taking issues that people have and amplifying them. This is what Russia is, and China. Russia is doing to the US, so that they'll only be in a position to appease and effectively surrender.
He believes this because from our side he's heard voices pleading for peace at any price, or better read than dead, or as one commentator put it, he'd rather live on his knees than die on his feet. And therein lies the road to war, because those voices don't speak for the rest of us. You and I know and do not believe that life is so dear and peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery. If nothing in life is worth dying for, when did this begin? Just in the face of this enemy? Or should Moses have told the children of Israel to live in slavery under the Pharaohs? Should Christ have refused the cross? Should the patriots at Concord Bridge have thrown down their guns and refused to fire the shot heard round the world? The martyrs of history were not fools. And our honored dead, who gave their lives to stop the advance of the Nazis, didn't die in vain. Where then is the road to peace? Well, it's a simple answer after all. You and I have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay. There is a point beyond which they must not advance.
Compare that rhetoric to the rhetoric you hear, that nonsense coming out of Trump's mouth at his rallies and whatnot. It's self-aggrandizing nonsense. There's no comparison. And you'll get your normal America First patriot, whatever, coming on and saying, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. But all that is just arguing towards appeasement, arguing towards America being first to retreat into its own little bubble on the other side of the world and sit there in a cocoon. If that's your idea of America First, then yeah, whatever. But this is a strength that I think we can all recognize as being what America needs right now in terms of standing up to Putin and standing up to that creeping interference that the Kremlin has throughout the world. We need to stand up to it. We need to work on how to combat disinformation and combat all of this, all of this. And again, it's not just Russia, it's China, it's Iran, it's North Korea as well. But all of their ability to undermine our public harmony and to undermine our democratic processes.
And this is the meaning, in the phrase of Barry Goldwater, peace through strength. Winston Churchill said the destiny of man is not measured by material computations. When great forces are on the move in the world, we learn we're spirits, not animals. And he said there's something going on in time and space and beyond time and space, which, whether we like it or not, spells duty. You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness. We will keep in mind and remember that Barry Goldwater has faith in us. He has faith that you and I have the ability and the dignity and the right to make our own decisions and determine our own destiny. Thank you very much.
And I don't think that's left wing or right wing. I just think that's strength. That's just an understanding that here is a nefarious enemy force that is hell-bent on gaining the upper hand. And you either stand strong against that or you appease it and surrender to it. Peace is easy if you just surrender. This is the message to that Trumpist approach to saying too many people are dying. We need negotiations. There needs to be peace. He doesn't talk about just peace. He talks about peace. In other words, he wants Ukraine to surrender. And if that's all you're interested in, that kind of peace, go for it. Surrender, and Ukraine will be in shackles to Russia eventually, in one way or another. Or you stand strong and stand up for what is good and right and proper. So that's Ronald Reagan, and times have changed when you see me playing a Ronald Reagan video, but I think that was a really important excerpt. And here we have the HTS leader in Syria, Julani, saying that he gave the Russians a chance to reconsider their relationship with the Syrian people. Quote, "We are not about to engage in a conflict with Israel, he adds. I'd be interested to see how that all pans out. It looks like they didn't take it because they are packing up shop, it appears, and moving out of Syria. Personally, I think the rebels should have helped them on their way with a couple of ATGMs aimed at those columns of Russian vehicles, but that's just my opinion. Anyway, that's enough from me. Take care, everybody, and I'll speak to you soon. Toodle pips. Oh, and please remember to like, share, and subscribe. We can do it. We can do it. 50,139 subscribers by the 2nd of January. It's an arbitrary goal that really doesn't change the world in any meaningful way. But now I've said it, we've got to do it. So that's all there is to it. I'm a poet. I didn't even know it.